Welcome, everybody. Happy New Year 2022. Can you believe it? This is our second Positive Psychology Hour for the new year. My name is Caroline Colas. I am your host today on the Positive Psychology Hour, a lunch and learn that we do in partnership with Whole Being Institute. Today, our topic is the metaphor mirror. Reflecting our present and future selves with sense, metaphor with Melissa Johnson Carissimo. Even in the best of times, and certainly in this dawning new year, the question, how are you, can pose a challenge. Metaphoric affect processing, or MAP, helps uncover new answers, focusing on metaphor as a neural phenomenon. MAP uses it strategically as an introspective sixth sense that perceives as well as describes our feelings, transforming how we feel in the moment. MAP was developed and researched in cancer and psychiatric treatment centers as a communication tool to support patients' well-being and reduce healthcare worker burnout. Today, you're going to need a pen and a pencil because this is going to be a very interactive session, and we'll be guided in the creation of our own metaphor mirrors. Through fanciful question and answers, this naturally poetic self-reporting will emerge gently, intuitively, and automatically. So you don't need to be a poet, you already are one. You're going to be activating our intuition, suspending our analysis, generating perspective, and stimulating deep empathic listening to ourselves and to each other. I want to tell you a little bit about our presenter today. Melissa Johnson Carissimo is a counselor trained in Carl Rogers' person-centered approach and a Whole Being Institute certified positive psychology coach. She's also the creator of Metaphoric Affect Processing MAP, which she has researched and taught in oncology, psychiatric palliative care, and nephrology contexts in the largest public hospitals of Genoa, Italy. In fact, she's calling in from Italy today, and her daughter is helping her with the technology, so we might see her wave from behind the scenes. MAP, as we said before, is a metaphor-based interview designed to facilitate intuitive introspection. And everyone, I cannot wait to do this. Melissa is based in Genoa, as I said, and New York City. She leads MAP training internationally for individuals and groups. And to learn more, I'll put it in the chat, her website. It's metaphormirror.com. Welcome to the call, Melissa. Thank you for calling in from Genoa, Italy. Is that correct?
Yeah. Sì, buongiorno a tutti. Yeah, that is
Oh
correct.
my gosh,
Absolutely.
I could listen to you speak Italian all day. Anybody else?
That's all I
Yeah.
can say. After many decades, I haven't managed much more, so I won't bore you with my Italian.
That's all right. Well, listen, I'm going to let you go ahead and get started. I'm really
Great,
excited about what we have to do today.
great.
And I just want to, I think I've added the spotlight there, so I think you're all set to go.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. I have a question for you right off the bat to start with, and that is really simply, how are you? As if a friend were asking or a family member, I'd love for you to respond to that in the chat with just a word or two. Let me know. Let me know how you are. I don't know. It can be a tricky question to answer. Soph, can you help me see my chats? Oh, thank you. This is what technical assistance is about. So let me see. What do we have happening here? Just a word or two in the chat. Achy. I see tired, wonderful, anticipatory. Nice, which I imagine was nice. Okay, this is neat. Sometimes it's not
We
easy.
also have some excited, good, anxious, stressed, but still grateful.
Thank you.
Grateful I arrived, uplifted, happy, hanging in there, apprehensive, wonderful, anticipatory, in progress. Glad to be
Yeah.
here.
Okay. Exhausted also. Connected.
Yes.
Pretty much okay. Sorry, I missed so many of these good ones. Thank you, Caroline. So our emotions are kind of like laundry in a washing machine sometimes. if we're that container, pardon my art, if we're that container, these bits and pieces of feelings can be sometimes indistinguishable one from another. And it can be difficult to answer that ubiquitous, how are you? And particularly difficult when we're feeling stressed, when we're feeling anxiety, depression, suffering of any sort, physical pain, illness. It gets harder and harder to answer this kind of a question. And as we do ask ourselves this sort of how are you and find it difficult to respond, we can begin this sort of cyclical, self-reinforcing track of negative thinking. And this is what I was discovering about a decade ago, listening to cancer patients and locked towards psychiatric patients. For some of them, the very simple question, how are you, was actually a kind of a trigger. And all the empathic listening in the world wasn't successful at helping them to express themselves in a way that helped them to feel better. In fact, telling their stories of difficulty or recounting what was making them feel unwell often made them actually feel worse. And it's neurological. There's this sense that or rather not a sense, it's a fact that one negative thought follows another, and we create, like fluid running down a hillside, a kind of trough. There's a deepening and an increased likelihood with every negative thought that another will follow along that track. So what we're looking for, and what I was looking for at that point, was some kind of a solution, some kind of a way to add a new kind of position for. I have just gotten not the kind of dots that I'm looking for here. Let me show you what I really mean, and that is a new position, a new track for our choice of emotional input. And that's what we're after. That's what we're after with.
Oh goodness, I think we have lost Melissa for a moment. Not to worry. I think she'll be back. I'm just going to check my chat because she said she sent me her PowerPoint. She did. And we will see.
I've got you guys again.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay, we're here. All good. Back to the question I'd like all of you guys to put into the chat. And that is, do you see it there on your screen? What color are you? And I'll let you put that into the chat and we'll see what we have going with what color are you. And if I miss some, help me, Caroline. I see blue, blue-green, yellow, teal. Ooh, I love that. Turquoise, hot pink, transparent, blue, muddy, more green, light blue, turquoise, gold. What I love about this is that people have an idea about what color their feelings are. And what we're doing as we're experiencing the question is we're actually stepping out. We're coming out of that turmoil of feelings, and we're metacognitively positioning ourselves in relation to them. And we can see a little more clearly what's in that emotional container. What we started out with was a rational question. So we asked, how are you? And what we've done with the intuitive, what color are you, is completely shift the track. We've moved from what Daniel Kahneman would refer to as System 2, the rational thinking track, which is neurologically separate from the intuitive one, onto his System 1, which is an embodied sense that can bypass the head, that track where rumination lives and where it's more difficult to change how we're feeling. What we've done here is actually interrupt, in spite of feeling less than great. We've been able to interrupt that negative cyclical effect. And this is what metaphoric affect processing is all about. And this is what I'm going to invite you guys to participate in. The acronym for metaphoric affect processing is MAP. And I love that because Google Maps comes to mind. What metaphoric affect processing does, or metaphor mirroring does, is help us to have a really clear sense of our starting point, of where we are right now, intuitively, emotionally. And then it will help us in the second part of the process, most of which we'll be working with next month as we look forward. It allows us to have a sense of our destination. So we get where we're coming from and where we're going to with the process. We're going to use metaphor as an instrument of perception. We know it as an instrument of description. Today, we're going to use it sensorily to identify, verbalize, and ultimately regulate emotion as metaphor. And this is what will give us the opportunity to then transform how we're feeling. There are 5 steps to this process: framing, perception, description, and that's what we're going to be working with today. And in February, at the first week of February, on the 6th, we're going to be focusing on the second half of the process, which is how to comment, how to talk about the process, and what we will produce, which is a metaphor mirror, which is a poetic text. And we'll talk about how to revise it in order to create a real sense of where we're going to, and where we want to be emotionally. So today we're going to look at how we feel right now. Our present moment is always the point of reference. And we're going to look at our right now with regard to 2021, with regard to the year that we're coming from. And this is going to be a particular experience. We're gonna look back together at 2021, but we're not going to talk about what happened. We're not going to describe the scenes of 2021 or tell their stories. Instead, this process gives us an opportunity to look at our past in a really different way, and it may give us a way to move into our future in ways that we couldn't have otherwise imagined. That's what we're after. The first step of the process is framing, and Nancy, I'm going to very shortly ask you to come be my volunteer. In this process, we've got a poet and a scribe. I'm the scribe. I'm going to be taking down what my poet answers to a series of questions, which are very simple and sensory. We're going to use our 5 senses. I'm going to ask questions. Nancy's going to give me very short answers without trying to be writerly, without trying to be a poet, though we will be creating little works of art. Nancy's gonna, as I hope all of you will, using your pencils and paper, at this point, not the chat, let metaphor be a kind of a lens for you. Let metaphor be what you use to scan the interior landscape of your feelings and perceive the feeling as metaphor, which will automatically, and you'll see how this works, give you words for what the feeling is. the frame, I'm going to give it to you. Typically, what we'll do with metaphor mirroring is decide what we want to focus on, decide what we want to explore with this kind of magical instrument. And it's typically a difficulty or a problem or something that we really want to change. Today, we're going to look together at 2021. So that's our frame this year just passed. And Nancy, are you on with me?
Yes, she is. I've spotlighted her.
Okay.
I'm
Can you
unmuted.
and there
I
you
believe,
are. There
I
you
believe,
are.
wait, am I unmuted? Hold on.
You are.
Okay, you can hear me.
Yeah.
Hang on
Perfect.
1 second. Let me just also, can you see both of you? Can you see both Nancy
I
and?
can see Nancy, and that's good enough for me. That's a great face, and I'm going to look at Nancy.
Hang
Okay.
on 1 second. I want to, let me just add this so everyone can see it as you go. Okay.
Okay. All right. So everybody, I invite you all to have at the top of your pages, your title, which is 2021, and it's going to look like this. And I'm going to make sure I've got my blue happening, and I'm going to write it in there. So that's what you guys can have at the top of your pages. Your title is 2021, and if you follow along with me, we will produce together a metaphor mirror. So from this point, similar to what we just did a second ago, I'm going to ask you to have a sense of where you are right in this moment. What's in your belly and bones, so to speak, with regard to 2021. So my question is, how do you feel right now in this moment with regard to 2021 as a color? What color are you if your title is 2021? Nancy?
Purple.
Purple. Okay. Now, I'm going to add this to my title. I'm going to write purple. And so it has begun. My next question for you guys, and think about it without being poetic, but going into the interior. What sound are you? With regard to 2021, what's the sound of your feeling?
Wow.
Yeah. Nancy, what
Wow.
sound is that feeling? The sound is wow. Okay, I heard wow. Tell me the nature of that sound. Tell me the nature of that sound. What kind of a sound is wow? No, really phonetically kind of. Wow. Wow. It's kind of round.
It's round, it's open, it's big.
I am a round, open sound. It's big. You all are creating your own answers as we go. And the next question is, with regard to this 2021, what is it to the touch? If you could hold your feelings in your hands or put your fingers up against those feelings about 2021, what would you feel to the touch? Nancy?
I'm getting burned. It's hot.
Hmm.
I can't touch it. I can't keep my fingers on it.
Hmm. Okay. And from touch, we move to something very primitive. With regard to 2021, what animal are you? And what is that animal doing? Nancy, 2021. What animal are you?
A kitten,
Hmm.
and I'm curled up in a ball.
Hmm.
And then I'm doing, when I uncurl, I'm doing, cat, the stretching of my back.
Hmm.
So, and then
Hmm.
sort of
And
in and out.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. And the last question, I started 10 years ago with 13 questions. It's gotten more and more essential and quicker as a process. The last question is, with relation to 2021, what movement or motion are you?
Balancing.
Balancing.
Yeah, I'm balancing, putting one foot in front of the other, but I'm balancing so I don't fall and keep going.
I see your hands in the air as well. What can you
Yeah,
describe that? Can describe that for me?
it's that my hands are part of me, helping me balance. I feel like I'm on a bit of a tightrope, but I keep going because if I stop, I could fall off.
Got it. Got it. This is um, this is a metaphor mirror. We've just externalized in this intuitive way how you're feeling, and if you'll let me, I'd like to give it back to you. Um, I'd like to recite this creation, and and see how you receive it. See how this feels for you. The title is 2021, and I'm gonna share with you all the what it looks like as I scribbled this down. 2021. I am purple. I'm a round, open sound. It's big. With regard to 2021, I'm hot to the touch. I can't keep my fingers on it. I'm a kitten, curled up in a ball. When I uncurl, it's in and out. I'm balancing, one foot in front of the other. My hands are part of me, on a tightrope. It's a kind of emotional hologram, and we've put those feelings out between us now. What's resonating for you without explaining or analyzing what you've just contacted? Can you tell me what you're feeling?
I took a very deep sigh when you stopped reading, and that was letting go of what I was getting from you, and what I was feeling from those words. It was,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's wonderful. That's very powerful. It's 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 exactly what we're looking for. This externalization. We now have an opportunity, having created this metaphor mirror with these characteristics, and each of you, I hope, have something on a page that represents this sequence. I'd like for us to move into breakout rooms so that you'll have the opportunity to recite these texts to each other. And I'll ask you to pay careful attention to not analyze or interpret what you've created. If each of you can take a minute, we'll each have the opportunity to recite this to each other, as I just did for Nancy, and then take just a couple of words, as Nancy did, to share what it's feeling like inside, which resonance is what we focus on, as opposed to an analysis of any sort of the meaning, because the meaning is much less important than the process of looking intuitively inside. If you will, Caroline, I will let you create breakout rooms. And
Sure.
what do you think? How many minutes should we give participants to share this?
I think if we just went a minute each and we gave them 5 minutes, and we'll see if there's 3 or 4 people.
Sounds
And
great.
Michelle had a question.
Yes.
I do have a question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So, I love this exercise. And so what you worked with Nancy, you recited her poem back to her, and she got to
Yes.
explain how she felt. Now, in our breakout rooms, we're going to be reciting our own poems to our.
That's right. That's right. This is a different process. And typically when I'm doing this with individuals, I won't even let them write anything because part of what we're really trying to do is stay with the intuitive process. And as soon as we're engaging the pen on paper, we're automatically kicking in with our rational selves. So this is something of an approximation, and it's ultimately an exercise that you can use on your own even. It's better and better as you get comfortable not engaging the head. It's a wonderful exercise. When you have a facilitator to lead you through it so that you can keep your hands off the pen and just be present, as Nancy got to do, it can be an even more powerful experience. But this way you guys are getting a taste of it.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Michelle.
All right, so I'm going to send you out into your rooms so that you
Great.
can have a chance to read your poem of 2021 to one another.
Your metaphor mirror.
Your metaphor mirror. Thank
Yeah.
you, Melissa. All right. I've opened up all the rooms, and we'll just have, all you have to do is accept them. All right. And I'll give people a moment to accept that, and let me make sure that everyone has someone in a room. All right. With 2, with Joan, from 7. Welcome back, everybody.
Everybody's with us, I hope. That was really neat. Shall I just jump right in,
Yes, please.
Caroline? Okay, I am jumping. That was really neat. I got to actually participate as well in a breakout room, and so thank you to Dave and Phoebe for letting me do that. So I heard a question that I'm going to answer about what happens when we have been in touch sensorily with feelings that are uncomfortable, when we don't like the images that have come up. And that's what this process, the next phase, is all about. But I just want to talk about what was just happening for you when we have the opportunity to use this magical tool of metaphor, the sense metaphor, to feel, to perceive, and then automatically have language for our feelings. We're bypassing our head and getting this document, which we are then able to share with someone else, which you guys just did with each other. And the receiving quality, the sensory reception, is so important and so powerful, so much more powerful than saying anxious or frustrated as a catch-all for how I'm coming out of 2021, which gets received by the listener as their own frustration. If Dave had said frustrated to me, I hear that and process it as what I, Melissa, know frustration to be. If Dave shares images with me, slow dances and colors of red, I have a sensory response, and it's what I call in this process intrinsic empathy. So the quality of listening that you guys were sharing and the quality of reception of the other person's feeling sharing is really very different from what happens when we share rationally. Now we're going to move into, or before we do, let's hear from you guys in the chat, or what do you think, Phoebe? Should we take a few moments to hear even live from a couple of people, very simply about how they felt representing themselves in this way, and then sharing it? And again, very important, without interpretation, without explaining what their answers were, but really just the resonance of the experience for people. Would anybody like to jump on and say a couple of words about that?
Sure. Here we go.
Can I let you manage that, Caroline? Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, Elaine.
Hi. After I wrote it and then read it, I realized that I was feeling much better about 2021 than I thought. It was like I was able to capture moments of happiness and things that made me happy. And so I felt very good. I felt better than I thought I did about 20.
That's fabulous. That is so neat. That is so neat. There was so much more in that picture than what you might have focused on with the rational process. Oh, 2021, that's what we're all saying.
Right.
But it's bigger than that.
It's bigger.
Wonderful.
I went from anxious and confusion and all to realizing that I was still able to capture my life.
Wonderful. That's what we hope is happening with this process.
And it was lovely to share it with others and to be the receiver of their poems as well.
Yes. Yes,
Beautiful.
This is a relational process. And even if you do it alone, which you can absolutely do, and it can be wonderfly effective, it's got that wonderful quality of all art, which is we do it to share it. And so that's inherently part of the activity. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Nancy's got her hand up.
Nancy's got her hand up. Okay, thank you, Joan. I don't see a hand, but maybe it's because it's.
I unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Hi, Nancy.
Nancy.
I can hear you.
Hi. What was interesting about our group is that I'm sitting in my apartment in New York City, in Manhattan. Andrea is in Hawaii, and Esperanza was in Peru.
Wonderful.
So because of our 3 different locations, we had 3 very different colors and sounds and touches and feels.
Ah, that's so wonderful. That is really neat. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, this is the process.
Sue Knight has her hand up.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Deutsch.
I have to say I took 4 minutes to get on here, so I wasn't quite sure why we went to 2021. And I did the 2021, and it took me to a very dark, anxious place. So I redid it for 2022 and felt much better. Because I've had in just the week, this last week just started off with amazing stuff. So
Well, you don't need to come back next month, because you've already you've jumped right ahead, and brava, because that it sounds like you're working the process. Yeah.
I wasn't
Lovely.
sure why you did 2021 because it really, I didn't want to go back. I'm like already.
Sue, what we're doing today is looking at a difficulty. This is what we use the process for. We look at a difficulty in order to change not our feelings but our relationship to the difficulty, which then opens us up to the possibility of transformation. This kind of sensory, metaphoric processing of our emotional state allows us to step out of how we're feeling. We're usually inside the bubble of whatever the emotional moment is. This allows us to come up and outside of that bubble and deal with it, in this case, on a page. Share it with somebody. It's a document now. And it sounds like that process was already working for you. It was very dark, and you revised it. And in fact, the last of the 5 phases of this process is the revision. And I'd love to move forward to giving some highlights about that so that you guys can get a sense of what's coming up. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, let's move forward.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. The penultimate of the 5 parts of this process is called commentary, and the commentary is definitional. And this was a real nut to crack in the early days of the codification of this process. In the cancer ward and in the psych ward, we were coming up with these wonderful expressions of difficult moments, because the framing of the exercise in those environments was this moment, and we didn't have to come up with a difficulty. They were having difficulties, my poets. So what was the most important thing, after having created these marvelous documents, was what do you do with it? And what became really clear immediately was we can't analyze it. We can't ask ourselves, how come we said this and how come we said that? And we don't want to go into personally associative.
Okay, we'll lost Melissa for just a moment. That's happened briefly before. I'm sure she will come back. If anybody wants to share in the chat a little bit about their experience of the poem. Amy said, I love hearing where everyone is calling in from. I am criticized for living at a very small life.
I'm back.
But thanks. Oh, thank
I'm back.
you.
Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Internet is an evolving technology here. So what we're going to do is be very, very aware always as we're looking intuitively at this past year, very aware of not analyzing what we come up with and not explaining ourselves, because that kicks us back into the rational thought process that we're trying to avoid. The last phase, which again we'll be getting into in part 2 of Metaphor Mirror, which will be on the 6th of February, is the revision phase. And I just want to ask my volunteer to come back on for just a second to help you frame the revision process. Hi, Nancy. Can you unmute? And let me ask you, thank you. Let me ask you this, and I'd like everyone to ask themselves this same question and be prepared to circle something on your poetic text, on your own metaphor mirrors. And that is, what of the images, and this goes to what Sue was describing, what of the images in your metaphor mirror with regard to your title, what of the images is sort of at the heart of the difficulty that's there in those feelings? what part of that metaphor mirror, you might ask, makes you feel most uncomfortable? What's the thing that really has to change in order for you to move closer to a sense of well-being with regard to your title?
Oh, the heat, it's too hot to touch.
Wonderful, wonderful. Just as a teaser, I'm gonna ask you this. And again, asking everyone to consider the same question. If this sense of heat were to begin to transform in such a way that you're moving closer to a sense of well-being, what does that tactile sense become? What is it as you hold it or put your fingers up against it? What does the feeling become?
It becomes warmth. So from heat to warmth, and then it's embracing and feeding versus repelling and fearful.
Okay. Got it. This will be the place that next month you will begin with your revision. And what the process does for us, as Sue was saying, we may be in a dark place, wanting some kind of a change, exploring some kind of a difficulty. And our emotional life can be a bit like being in the woods. We can't really so much see the forest for the trees, as it were. And what this process of revision is going to help us do, and again, we won't have time to actually work into it today, but it's going to give us the opportunity to, just for the period of time that we're actually mirroring, it's going to give us a chance to move slightly up the side of that hill, just a little higher up in the valley. We can see over the tops of those trees, and we're going to get a little view, going to create that view of where we want to go. And what's going to happen, because, again, of the magic of metaphor. Vittorio Galese's research is so magnificent in terms of mirror neurons and explaining this phenomenon. But we're going to see where we want to go in a way that we couldn't when we were inside the woods, and we're going to be able to bring it back with us. This is, of course, metaphor mirroring isn't a cure for anything, but it gives us some insight. We're going to have to go back down into those woods because we're not going to be made suddenly all better by having experienced this process. But we're going to take a bit of that destination back. And like Google Maps, if you know where you want to get to, it's easier to get there if we don't have an idea of the destination. And in this sense, a destination that, just as you experience sensorily your present moment with regard to your title, now we're going to sensorily experience our desired preferred state with this process, and it's gonna make it easier to get to. Again, in this revision process that we're going to go through, we're going to have a new document, and our internal sense, our emotional reality will be able to, when we conjure it, reflect the document that we're going to create. In the way that our metaphor mirror today reflected how we were feeling, the reverse happens in the revision, such that we create a document which our emotional state in the moment is going to have the opportunity to reflect. So again, we're going to get in touch next time with a little bit of that destination and walk with it for a little while together. And prepare, as we've begun, we'll be a month in already to 2022, to launch some of that destination sparkle that we'll create into our forward motion into the year. So that's what we'll be up to this second half of the metaphor mirroring. Always at the center is how we're feeling right now. And we'll be projecting ourselves into a positive 2022. I'd love to, I think we have a few more minutes, and Caroline, if there are questions, would that be appropriate to open up to?
Sure,
Can I
absolutely.
let you?
Anybody have a question or a comment? And I also wanted to let everybody know that next week we have Jordan Feingold, who, if you were here for our New Year's Day event, she was amazing. She and Scott Barry Kaufman did the opening keynote. She's going to be talking about positive medicine. And then on Thursday, we will be having Jody, who will be, how do you want 2022 to be? So please join us. In the meantime, is there anybody that would like to come off mute and share? Yes, Nancy, go ahead.
So I have a question in terms of, in our group, we also talked about our feelings as we heard the other person's metaphor mirror, because it was an experience we had all gone through with the title.
Wonderful.
And there was the impact of hearing those words on
Yes,
our own
indeed.
Feelings.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So I don't know if it's a question or a comment.
That's beautiful, and I'm so glad you're underscoring that the empathic, the relational part of the work. Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, Nancy, for being my poet.
Yes, thank you, Nancy, so much, right? Bravo for just standing up and standing out and showing us all how to do this process. Really helpful. Anyone else like to? Yes, Deborah, go ahead.
Hi, I just want to say that I was amazed at how poetic the responses were from all of us, that I know you referenced about it being a poem, but until we actually read them out loud, I was surprised. And I'd say that came through for everybody's. And then the other theme that seemed to come across was one of movement, in our
Yes.
group, about moving away, which was, one of the most salient things for me about 2021. And I know when I think about it, there was a lot of positive individual things, but I think especially because of how the year ended with this sort of overall, when there's more cases of COVID and there's this sense that we have to retreat yet again, from some of our activities and our get-togethers, that sort of eagerness to get to a new world, whatever that comes out in 2022, I think was apparent.
Yeah. Thank you, Deborah. Yeah, that's the poetic nature. That's one of the lovely things that is a product of using sense metaphor. If you're using a metaphoric lens to explore how you're feeling, the words that you come up with are naturally going to be really eloquent, really elegant. It's amazing and empowering. One of the things that was so moving to me in with psychiatric patients, even those who were struggling with alexithymia, which is an inability to identify and verbalize one's feelings. Even these individuals were able to participate in this process and come up with a metaphor mirror that they said represented how they felt. And did it in language that they could not possibly have fished out for themselves if confronted rationally, directly front on. So yes, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for noticing that and for sharing that with each other.
And one last question. Can you say something more about Kahneman and his work, Thinking Fast and Slow, as it relates to your MAP model, especially now that we've experienced it?
Yeah. Daniel Kahneman did amazing work. It was actually about decision making and choice. But he did incredible research that really showed us, and ultimately we've seen it in magnetic resonance imaging, that there are two thinking modalities, two thinking systems. And one, his thinking system one, is intuitive and the other is rational. And what we're doing when we propose a question like, what color am I? Or what sound am I in this moment? Is we're just knocking ourselves off, like in roller derby. Do you remember roller derby? Knocking ourselves off of the rational thinking track that we all live in because we must, because we wouldn't have survived as a species without that default mode. But when we knock ourselves off with a question like, what color are we? We're moving into the intuitive realm, Kahneman's system one. And that's where we can really make changes, real shifts that begin inside.
And then just a quick question about Kahneman himself and what kind of professional he was.
He was a research psychologist. He worked with Tversky. They were amazing and inspiring partners. Their early research was in Israel with armies, with soldiers. They were intrepid in their applications of psychological study to efficient functioning. And thinking fast and slow is magnificent. And Kahneman is very much alive and kicking and being brilliant today.
And Phoebe says a Nobel Prize winner.
Thank you. Thank you. Indeed.
Yes. Indeed. Well, I cannot thank you enough. I think I speak for everyone because we've gotten a lot of feedback in the chat. Melissa, this was just wonderful. A very, very thought-provoking session and so interesting. I don't think have you guys done this before? I've ever done this, right? Michelle's shaking her head. I haven't either. To wrap out 2021. It's just,
I'm so excited for you for having had the chance to share it with you guys. You've been an amazing audience.
And I'm so excited that you're coming back because who wants to do 2022? Sue's a little ahead of us. Sue Knight is a little ahead of us, but we'll get to 2022. And please join us next week. Our speakers are just fantastic. Jordan Feingold. Someone asked about the film Mission Joy. Melissa, we had the film Mission Joy, which was, if people haven't seen it yet, I really highly recommend it. It was with Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama and explored their friendship. Unfortunately, we were only given that link for 72 hours. If you're interested in seeing that film, just go on the website and look at Mission Joy, and you'll be able to see where else that is showing. And but we're happy to send out the keynote. It was with Kelly. The closing remarks. It was again another partnership with Whole Being Institute, and it was with Kelly McGonigal and Dr. Michael Steger, and it was they were phenomenal. It was fantastic.
Can I just add one last thing?
Yes, you can.
I would be so happy if anyone who contributed today or participated rather would like to share their mirrors with me. My contact information is at the very top of the chat, and I would be so happy to get to read your mirrors of your year past before we head off into feeling our way into 2022.
Awesome. And I'm going to take the spotlights off. So you are able to unmute everyone. We'll put in gallery view. And if you'd like to let Melissa know in your own words a little bit about the session and a little appreciation, please feel free to do so. There's lots of appreciations in the chat. So enriching and fun. Thank you, Melissa and JCC and my fellow poets. Yes.
Thank you, Nancy.
Awesome.
And Melissa.
Thanks, everybody.
Everyone. Very
that was really great. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. That was great.
Just so fun.
Really super.
Don't want to stop.
How do we say goodbye in Italian?
Arrivederci. Ciao, 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 ciao,
ciao, ciao.
And you do it like this. Ciao, 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 ciao.
Bye.
All right, everybody. Stay safe, be well, and we'll see you next time.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Ciao, ciao.
Happy New Year.